Thank
Okay,
you,
your
Wayne,
your poll is up.
Perfect. Okay. So to get us started tonight on our Zoom meeting, we're going to have a few poll questions. Everybody takes a minute here and answer this first one, which is, what is the best positioning for the center? Is people answering it? There we go. I see it. I see it now. Okay. We have everyone has answered. So let's share the results. And are you guys able to see the results now? Are they coming up, Wayne?
Yeah, they are, Richard.
Okay, perfect. So we have the diagonal was at 30%. So that is one recommendation by IFAB. Within 10 to 15 yards is also another highly recommended positioning for the center referee. And then the S and or even I've heard people call it the snake is kind of an add-on to as you develop as a referee and continue to advance in your level of officiating. Center circle, I don't advise to have your positioning be the center circle. Okay, let's go to the next one. And so now you should have a question of, when running with play, you should be. Okay, it looks about half of you have answered this question so far. Okay, I got 31 people, so we'll go ahead and end this one. And I will share the results. Hopefully you can see the results. The number one answer was at an angle to the left of the player with the ball. So that is the recommended positioning that you should be trying to strive for when you are officiating. Of course, you can't always achieve that based on how play develops and or the speed of the attack. But that is the desired position of where you should be trying to get in your positioning as the center referee. Okay, last poll question for tonight. Let's see. I can see. Let me try this again. Okay, hopefully you got, as the center referee, I should, and you have 4 options there in regards to the penalty area. Are we seeing that, Wayne?
Yes, we are.
Perfect. Okay, hopefully a few more answer. Okay, we made it to 30. Okay, based on the responses tonight, we have one person who wants to stay out of the penalty area, but otherwise go into the penalty area to be 10 to 15 yards from play. Again, that's what we're trying to strive in regards to our distance. We all know that the top of the penalty area is 18 yards. So that means that we should see referees in the penalty area, because if you have a challenge on the goal line in order to be 10 yards from that, you would have to be 8 yards into the penalty area. So it's always a recommendation to not treat the penalty area as an area of lava, but as an area in which to get in and be able to see the play as the game is demanding. Okay, well, hopefully that warmed things up here a little bit. And now we'll get into some of teaching points that hopefully will help you in regards to your positioning. So IFAB, directly out of IFAB around positioning, movement, and teamwork, states that the best position is one for which the referee can make the correct decision. All recommendations about positioning must be adjusted using specific information about the teams, the players, and events in the match. So that is the overriding philosophy in which you should use when thinking about your positioning on the field. So here's some recommendations that IFAB also gives. I'm sure several of you have heard some of these recommendations as you have either seen in your new referee clinic. Maybe you've been fortunate enough that other members on your crew may have shared some thoughts about your areas of opportunity as a center official, or maybe you've even been mentored and the mentors provided you these tips. But we should be keeping the play between you and the lead AR. The lead AR should be in the vision of the referee, so that way they can see all the players between, or most of the players between those two officials. And again, that diagonal and trying to stay the diagonal keeps you so that you're staying outside of the area of play, giving you hopefully the best angle, which gets back to that being to the left behind the player with the ball. We talked about how you should be 10 to 15 yards from play, but you also don't want to be too close in which you begin interfering with play. And then what needs to be seen is not always in the vicinity of the ball, so giving yourself the right angles and right space will help you in regards to confrontations that happen off the ball, other offenses in the area that's towards which the play is moving, and then also anything that's occurring after the ball is played out of the area. So that's what IFAB gives us as an overall suggestion in regards to positioning. So here's a great diagram of what IFAB shows for the diagonal. As you can see, you have your assistant referee here in the lower right-hand quadrant of the screen, and your AR2 in the upper right-hand quadrant of the screen. Providing this diagonal helps to keep you so you have players usually going to be in this vicinity between you and your AR. So this is always a great, when you start to get confused on the field, in that one, you're getting too far from play, two, you're getting too close to play, try to go back and remember your diagonal, and maybe getting back on your diagonal and then adjusting from that again may help you get to the right position to be able to stay within proximity and give you the angles that you're looking for to be able to see any types of fouls that are being committed between players. Okay, so here's my advice in regards to positioning to kind of take those couple slides that IFAB gives us and try to give you some concepts that maybe as you do your games, you can think about where you should be. So I just showed the slide that has the diagram for your diagonal. The S is a way that a lot of referees, as they develop, start to have more of an S than a diagonal. Now, I'm going to try something here. I'm trying something new tonight. And let's see if this will work. And it may not work as well as I had hoped. Okay, so hopefully you see somewhat of a crude picture of a soccer pitch. In regards to the S, let's see if we can make this work. That kind of gets to this piece where people try to go around the center circle and may use that and then get back to their diagonal depending upon how play develops, because you may have play happening over here in your AR's quadrant. So that's kind of where maybe more of that S kind of comes up with as a concept. The other piece here that I want to talk about is channels. If you look at the field in having channels, and I'm sorry I don't have circles because I didn't have enough time to figure out how to make circles on my new whiteboard. But everybody can kind of get to the fact that you kind of have the center circle here, which isn't a very good circle. It's amazing to me as I watch games that I find referees who spend most of their time right here. And they just go up and down the center channel. And again, IFAB saying we should have a diagonal that goes from the top of the penalty area corner to the opposite penalty corner area. If we're a center channel referee, we're only hitting our diagonal in the middle of the field as the play goes through. I would tell you that I often tell referees that the center circle is maybe where you should treat it as an area of lava as opposed to your penalty areas, because a lot of transition occurs in that center circle. So getting back to that S formation is what I think a lot of referees have used to stay out of the center circle that keeps them from getting into that transition of play that happens in that center circle. By going around the center circle, that doesn't mean that we should walk around. That usually is going to mean we need to get ourselves some speed, so that way we still are making the same distance down the field to keep up with play, but yet we're not getting in the middle of play of the players that are trying to make their transition through that center circle. Okay, I'm going to pause for a second and see if there's any questions so far.
There's nothing in the chat, but anybody can unmute and speak.
No question, but I love the graphic. I think that added to the discussion.
Good. So I haven't found out how to be able to transition between the whiteboard and the PowerPoint very well. So I'm trying to do it on my own and see what we can do. But let me go back to getting rid of some of my lines here. What I often tell referees is that I would encourage them, when I see them being a center channel referee, to try to figure out how to spend more time in these two channels. When you're in these two channels, and again, you've got all these great landmarks on your field to help see where you should be. Because if you think of these channels in this way, you've got these landmarks that tell you, I want to try to stay out of this channel, but I want to try to stay in these two channels more of the time And that's going to help me again keep my diagonal. And I'm going to be on my diagonal more on these channels than I am if I'm in the center channel. In fact, you'll be on your diagonal twice as much as if you'd be then being a center channel referee.
Hey, Richard, this is Darren.
Yep.
Got a question for you. So with this diagonal run, and I totally agree with you, and I think it's great that you're walking us through this. What if the game doesn't support this? And what I mean by that is if the run of play is on one side or the other and it sticks there, what's your recommendation there?
Okay, so just like I said earlier about when you find yourself in a game that you feel like you're in the way or you're not in the right spots to be able to see play, sometimes that's because referees get off their diagonal. Okay, so the diagonal again is, and even these two channels is a great way to think about how to officiate. But I'm always going to get back to what's one of the most important things that we need to do as referees is to be 10 to 15 yards away from play. So if you've got play that's always occurring here or always occurring here in front of your AR, you're absolutely right. This diagonal is not going to do you much good. And that's where you're going to want to adjust. And that's also why I think when we've talked about the S is why some referees have this S, because as play gets over here in this S, they're closer to where they need to be, still keeping the rule of thumb from IFAB of having between the AR and the center referee, the most of the players and or the play. Does that help, Darren?
Yeah, no, that gives it clarity. I think it's a good rule of thumb, and that using, what your proximity is to the play of the game makes even more sense. And that's one thing I need to develop is more of the S kind of approach than out of just the diagonal side. So that helps. Thanks.
I think that as you kind of move from that diagonal positioning to the S positioning, what it does is it also it is forcing you, because sometimes the S may also be this way, but it's forcing you to get wider because we want referees to be wider on the pitch, again, getting out of this center channel refereeing. And so by using that center circle and trying not to go through it, it's going to help you with your angles on whatever plays developing in that attacking third.
Hey, Richard.
Yeah.
We'll ask a question about single referees and what happens on corner kicks.
So if you go back to IFAB and positioning, their recommendation is for corner kicks that referees should be here. And a lot of people try to change their positioning when they do single crew matches. And what I'm going to say is that will create you bad habits, because what you're always trying to do in a single crew game is we find ourselves trying to just stay 10 to 15 yards away and not having either that using that diagonal to get wide. And then we just kind of become a object that's following the ball around the field. So I encourage referees that whether you have a 3-person crew or a single person crew, this positioning and trying to achieve these angles should be used in both scenarios in order to always have good positioning on the field, no matter how many crew members you have. I think Jonathan has made a comment, and I'd happy for you to come on if you can, Jonathan, because I know you mentor a lot of referees. I know you've gotten a lot of mentoring over the last month with being at Far West Regionals and President's Cup Nationals. So please part some great wisdom that you've gained with us, for us.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Good evening. I was actually out this past weekend doing a lot of mentoring, and a lot of what I was trying to instill on the referees that I was watching is what Richard has here. And the thing that I love doing is kind of putting a number to all of these, so that way we can all contextualize it. So most commonly what people do is they put it in zones 1 through 5. And so you'll have 1 be, the topmost one, and then you'll have 5 be the bottommost one. And so one of the big things that I got out of regionals and by extension nationals is that you don't want to hang out in zone 3. It's a passing zone only because most commonly that's where players are trying to occupy and manipulate the space. So your best bet is to hang out in 4 or hang out in 2. And then if you have to get out of the way, that's when you skirt over into 1 and 5. But 3 should be a zone where you stay out of the way. Those of you that do the higher level adult games as well, you'll know that if you start hanging out in 3 too often, players will let you know. They will tell you because you're constantly in their way, you're getting in their path. It becomes a mess. So yeah, I would say that most commonly when I'm watching referees, they're hanging out in 3 and they're getting hit by the ball. They're getting hit by players. They're getting ran over by players. So if you want to avoid that, then start trying to get out of 3 and get into 2 and 4.
Okay, any other questions, comments at this time?
Richard, I got one for you.
Okay,
Let's assume you're in zone 2, and that's actually a counterattack going toward your right. And number 2 is actually you, the referee. Okay. And so you can see that you're behind the attack. Okay. So you don't have a clear view of what's going to happen or the challenge. So you may not be able to get into your the ideal diagonal position but you can just switch lanes, okay? Preferably to the left, okay? And going into the zone 1, lane 1. But sometimes that's not possible. So, but switch lanes is a little trick to learn to help you get your angle real quick and then close in on proximity.
okay, I think I'll switch back to, hopefully I'll switch back to, just a minute here. I've lost my icons. I'm going to close my whiteboard board, go back to the presentation, hopefully here. But I actually have to share it. Okay, penalty area.
Go ahead. There
So,
you go.
I am penalty area. It's amazing to me on how many referees find the top of the penalty area as a physical wall in which not to cross. If you as a referee want to advance, if you as a referee want the buy-in from the players, the spectators, and the coaches, you have got to figure out how you get in the penalty area. Because what happens is that referees who stop at the penalty area then become these leaning towers to try to get a better look at what's happening, instead of just using their feet to walk forward or jog forward or run forward to be able to keep that 10 to 15 yards proximity to be able to make that call and sell it. I think that because so many people, and the next time you go out and officiate your game, I want you to count how many times you step in the penalty area, because you should be stepping into it as many times as possible. If you've got a ball that is dribbling slowly to go out for a goal kick, you should be getting inside that penalty area to make your signal that it's going to be a goal kick. Because the players, if you do that on a goal kick and you are signaling in that area, when you have a tough decision to make, they're already going to visualize that you're getting in the penalty area. So even if you don't get in the penalty area on those tough decisions, because they've seen you get in there so many times before, they're going to think you were in there to make that call. Again, making sure that we keep that 10 to 15 yards. And if we have an attacker versus a goalie challenge, we need to be closer to that 10 yards than that 15 yards. And a lot of those challenges happen near the goal line. So that means we need to be 10 yards from the goal line, not 18 yards from the goal line, trying to sell the call at the top of that penalty area. Any questions, comments about penalty area and you trying to figure out how you get yourself into it? Okay, my last concept I want to hit tonight, I believe, is speed. And so I think this is kind of the third component of how you as an official can be successful on the pitch in regards to your positioning. It's amazing to me on how many referees that I see do mod games who walk around the field or stop and then maybe walk and then stop and maybe walk. I think those of you who are doing mod field size games, those are the games that you really can be spending your time on working on your positioning. And you can really be working on your speed. I know sometimes the space is too small, but at least maybe thinking about it. So when you do get on the full pitch, these concepts are going to come pretty natural. In most of my mentoring sessions that I do with referees, I'm usually talking to them about whatever speed they are here in 1 through 5, encouraging them how they should have been using the one above the one that they actually were doing. When any of us as referees are standing, you've now become a spectator of the game. You're no longer officiating the game. As an official, do you ever see play in the run of play? And remember, I just said the run of play. Do you ever see everybody stopped on the field? We only see everybody stop on the field when we have dead ball situations because of fouls, injuries, or the ball's gone out of play. So if you want to stand in those situations, great. But otherwise, as long as that ball is in play, we should be walking, we should be jogging, or we should be running, and at times we should be sprinting. And there's a lot of referees out there that maybe have 1 or 2 of these. For those of you that have been mentored or have been to State Cup or have those aspirations to go to regionals, you've got to figure out how you have 3 speeds on the pitch. So what I encourage you to do is if you find yourself standing and watching play, you need to figure out where you should be walking to. And referees always say to me, well, where should I walk to? And every referee knows where to walk to. You should either walk to where your play is going to develop to next, or you should be walking to get yourself in the right channel. So we just talked about channels. So if you're standing and you're in channel 3, you already know you should be moving to channel 2 or channel 4 as you're watching play. But at least at that point, you're no longer standing and you're getting yourself into a better position. If you're walking and the play's developing, then you should be jogging. And most likely when people are jogging, they probably should have already started running. And I think the best speed that most people lack is the sprinting. And how do we figure out, how do we sprint so we have the right positioning? So I'm going to go back to our whiteboard, hopefully. And so maybe we can see this visually a little bit. As I said, we talked a little bit about if I'm in zone 3 and I'm standing watching play, I easily can move to zone 2, or if the ball is playing this way, over to zone 4, whichever zone it is I need to get so that I'm trying to keep myself on that diagonal. When we're out here on the field and as play is developing an attack, I always encourage referees that your point in which you are aiming for is this corner or this corner. And if play is happening over here in quadrant 1, we really should be aiming out here in quadrant 1 to have the complete width, because as IFAB said, we should be able to get most all the players between us and our AR who's hanging out down here. And so if play's here, we've got to get this wide so we come across here. Questions about speed of the referee?
Hey, Richard, this is Darren again. I don't know if it's necessarily about speed, but just in your last point about getting as far left to the players, one of the things that I'd heard and have understood is that we're trying to protect the goal box line coming from the end line, so we can see whether the players are playing in, or if they're in the penalty box or not. And so I guess my only thought or concern is if I'm so far left of everybody else, I'm not going to have that perspective as cleanly as much as if I'm almost in parallel with that line. Or does that make sense?
Yes. So let me make sure I'm understanding. Is this the line that you're saying we're supposed to protect?
No, it's the one coming off the end line.
So this one is the one we're supposed to protect.
No. See where your arrow is? If you're, how do you put this? The one parallel the touch line.
This one.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And so you're afraid that if you're too far out over here, you can't see, you don't have the right angle to be able to determine whether that foul occurred inside or outside.
Correct.
How many times in a game do you have to make a decision of whether or not you have a foul that's occurred inside or outside of this line?
Few.
A few.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not it. I mean, on my 2 fingers, probably.
Yes. So
So-
I think your concern is valid when you have play occurring there. And so what I would say is that if you feel like you've got a decision that's going to need to be made here, then yeah, getting this wide is probably not where you want to be in that instance, and you are going to want to line up there. But even if I go with you got 10 decisions to make down here, and you feel like, you got 10 decisions in a game to make, and you only have twice that you're going to have to make this line decision, 80% of the time you should be out here, not standing here.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions on this?
Say, Richard, this is Paul. To continue on going out to quadrant 1, when things get down in that coffin corner, it's really important that you get within the 10-15 yards from that also, just because that's where not good things are going to happen.
So at regionals, Wayne, who was the MLS referee that was there?
Sabiga
No,
and Victor Rivas.
Victor Rivas. I sat and listened to a conversation he was having with a bunch of referees there. And his comments were that in today's game, most all of your decision and activity is occurring here and occurring here. And that's really, as referees, where we predominantly should be in our games. So again, that gets back to the staying with this concept. If we go to the diagonal gives you being in these proximities where you need to make decisions for the game most of the time. Okay, I'm gonna close out of here and let's see if I had anything else in my PowerPoint. I like the new whiteboard, but I'm still not sure. I don't think I like how it transitions between other medium while trying to present. And look at that. The last thing that I had is questions. So any questions about the material I covered tonight on positioning to start with? I hope that maybe something that I shared tonight will stick with you and you will try to use in your next game. As officials, we always are learning new things on how to officiate. And I encourage you to, when you're the center referee, to gain feedback from your ARs, especially when your ARs are more experienced. And ARs that are more experienced, I hope that you are offering to share feedback to center referees that can make them better. We're not fortunate in that we have coaches at every one of our games like our soccer teams do. Our soccer teams have coaches that are providing them feedback for 90 minutes of their game. Well, at least some of the coaches are. And if they're not providing it at the game, they're providing them at their practices, which they usually have, probably 2 to 5 per week. So our games are kind of our places where we get to learn, where we get to get feedback. Unfortunately, we don't have coaches all the time, so we really got to help each other and take from the experiences that we've had, the knowledge that we gain, and share it with each other. I'm not hearing any other questions, so I know we always like to open it up to open forum and see if there's any questions. As we do that, I'm just throwing up the tournament schedule. We've almost made it through July. Phil Berg's going to kick us off in August with the Pac Northwest Summer Blast Off. If anybody on here tonight is a newer official, that's a recreational select tournament. I encourage you, this is a great place to get out there and do your first games. And for those of you who have been officiating, these are great games to go out and try those higher levels that maybe you haven't felt comfortable yet with in the RCL arena. But then there's the rest of them for August. We'll end the summer tournaments the first weekend of September for the Labor Day Cup. And then Craig will do the Starfire Showcase for the college in November. And then as we all look forward to the beginning of the year with the Pac Northwest Winter Classic over 2 weekends.
Richard, is Desna Cup still there?
Oh, I apologize. Thank you, Wayne. Desna Cup is occurring the third weekend of August, and hopefully I'll have those games up by the end of this coming weekend, if not before. And so that's a great tournament for those that are wanting to maybe start doing adult games, go out there and run some lines and be able to see what those games are about. And then for those that are been doing adult games but are ready maybe for a center, that's a safer place for to be started at. Well, this is a quiet crowd tonight. Anybody have any questions? Announcements?
Richard, I have a question. KD here. Can you clarify what is the protocol for head injuries? Because I was under the impression that if you send a player off for what you deemed is a potentially serious head injury, they are not allowed to return to play unless they're cleared by a concussion specialist or medical specialist available there, if there is one available. And the reason I ask this, and I think Craig Allen is on, if he can explain a situation that happened at the Sounders Cup last weekend, not this one that just finished, but the weekend before that. I was told secondhand of a situation where a coach sent a player back onto the field who was sent off by the ref because of a potential head injury. He scored a goal. The center ref disallowed the goal. And then there was, I think he was advised by Craig that was not correct. And then I don't know what happened after that, if Craig made them play an extra 4 or 5 minutes, but maybe Craig can help explain the situation in case I am retelling the story incorrectly.
So I'll let Craig talk if he wants, but I'm gonna try to give us what we should do in regards to head injuries in which we as the referee feel they need to be cleared by a healthcare professional. So I always encourage referees that if you're having a player go off the field, that you feel the player has an injury in which must be cleared by a healthcare professional, that we're communicating that to the coaching staff as they leave the field. The worst thing that I think any referee can do is put themselves in the situation of letting a player go off the field and not being clear in our communication of what our expectations are in order for them to come back in. When we don't communicate those expectations, we can have what it sounds like potentially happened at Sounders Cup, where a player did get back onto the field without being cleared for a head injury. Now, I'm not sure if that happened in that case or not. Secondly, as a crew that has told a coach that the player needs to be cleared by a healthcare professional, our AR1 or whatever AR is near that bench, because sometimes we have teams on both sides, needs to be a partner in helping the crew be successful and making sure that if that player goes up for a substitution and they haven't been told by a healthcare professional that they're cleared, reminding the coach and or the player, hey, no healthcare official has checked in with us to say that you are cleared to go back on the field. have you been able to do that? Can that person come give me the A-OK? When we leave it up to our center official, who at the time of beckoning players on, hopefully can see the numbers of the players as they are coming onto the field, we're setting them up for potential failure. So KD, I'll go back to, does what I just described give you some tools and some processes that answers your question and feels like would make the situation successful in the future?
It does, and it mirrors what I did one time when I felt there was a serious head injury. There was a head collision, both of the players trying to go over the ball. She was wobbly as she got up. I'm like, I can't let her back on the field. I told the coach that. I told my AR1 that number, I forgot what number she was, but whatever, number 8 cannot come back into play. And I told her there's a healthcare professional at the tent. This is at Starfire, the tent, not the tent, but underneath where the ref is. So yeah, that is helpful, Richard. But I'm still unclear on what happens if, for example, she gets back on and neither I or the AR was aware of it until after she scores a goal.
I don't know, Craig, if you want to talk or if you want me to keep continuing what I believe.
Right. I think what we want to talk about is the proactive steps to prevent that player from coming back onto the field. And like you said, AR1 and the referee need to work and communicate together about when we've identified a player with a potential head injury, and protecting that player for safety reasons and not allowing them back onto the field of play.
And I would say that once you've allowed a player back onto the field of play, you have, as the official, allowed that substitution to occur and with a restart. Now, if after you've restarted and you identify that number 8 who went off for a head injury and you wanted cleared and don't remember getting them cleared, you have every right to stop the game and say, hey, wait a minute, I don't know that I did not get information that you've been cleared, and have the player go off the field. I'm not sure in the laws of the game where, as an official who has allowed a substitution to occur, can overturn a goal when they're the ones that allowed the substitution to occur. That is somewhat different than when you get into a player who's been sent off, potentially, but with an injury, you're the one that's let them in. When you have a issue like this occur, that's where you need to make sure you're writing up supplemental reports, and then let the league or the tournament staff sort out what needs to occur there to rectify the situation according to the league rules or the tournament rules. But I think this is a great example of where we as officials, and KD, I appreciate you even adding to your dialogue with the coach about where they can find their healthcare professional, because when we're at these tournaments, all these tournaments have trainers now, and we should really be using those trainers to protect our athletes from concussions. And them being off the field for 5 minutes during a tournament to get cleared is nothing compared to us circumventing that piece and then them having longer term repercussions because of some type of concussion.
Richard, did you see the question in the chat?
No. So, this is where this gets really tricky, everyone. And tournaments are so much easier, high school so much easier, because we know who the healthcare professional is. When we get into league, which we'll all start doing here in a couple months, we really get ourselves in a spot where healthcare professionals aren't as easily seen unless you're at ECNL events, they usually have healthcare professionals. So at a tournament, there's no reason to take a coach or an assistant coach as their word that they're a healthcare professional because you've got one on site. And I would use that rule of thumb all the time, is that if there is an identified healthcare professional, then there's no reason for a coach or an assistant coach or a parent to be a healthcare professional. If it was my game and I have a head injury and it's on a Sunday 11 o'clock game, and all of a sudden the coach says I'm a healthcare professional and they didn't let me know that prior to the game, I am not going with them as a healthcare professional, because they did not proactively identify themselves as that to be there in that role. The only thing that they presented themselves to me that day was as a coach or an assistant coach. And any parent that's along the line that claims that they are a doctor, I absolutely am overjoyed that they're there to help that player and assist them with that injury. But again, I am not going to take their word that they've been cleared to come back on that field. And I will tell you that most physicians will not jeopardize their license to clear a player to come back on the field. So hopefully that helps a little bit, Connor. Wayne, anything that you have to add from your experience on what I just answered?
Well, only thing that, a couple things. One, this is a law, okay? About head injuries, you know, and Washington Youth Soccer says, you know, if the coach puts a player back on after, you know, before being cleared, you can send them off again. So you can keep on doing that as many times as necessary. So.
Okay.
And this also kind of falls under the safe sports guidelines of protecting minors in situations where we want to proactively protect them from being put back into a game by an adult.
So many years ago, I actually had a doctor come out and try to do this. And when we asked him casually what his specialty was, and when we found out he was a dentist, we decided just to stick to our guns.
Yeah. Okay, I think we got time for maybe one more question, if there's any more questions out there.
Richard, what did you learn from regionals? What would you do differently next year?
Jonathan, that's a fantastic question, because tonight's presentation is exactly why I did it, is that these are the things that I covered in my mentoring sessions with referees all over the far west. People don't get into the penalty area, and they definitely weren't getting into the penalty area when they needed to be making decisions, and they needed to be selling those decisions to the players, to the coaches, and to the spectators. If you as an official, these tips or philosophy that I shared with you, if you follow these things, get good angles, get wide, be close to play. If you're not doing them today and you start doing them, I will guarantee you will have less people yelling at you in regards to your decisions. They are going to, because of where you are on the pitch, they're going to, and when you're in those places when you don't need to make big decisions, they're going to think you're always there, because you're always there when you don't need to be there. And so when you make decisions, they're going to be less likely to criticize or provide feedback to you about your officiating. So we have the honor of officiating very skilled athletes. And I see referees become successful when they also are athletes out there on the pitch. And so when we give the game the respect that the players are giving the game, we seem to get the respect of the players, coaches, and spectators. And I think that's a great question to end the evening with, Jonathan. I appreciate it. Next month, we will do our usual recap of league rules, try to help you all start the season off to understand the difference between the different leagues. I'm working with Washington Youth Soccer to get some information from them to make sure we all know what we're doing with U12. We'll just talk a little bit about high school and their rule nuances and what they're wanting from our officials for high school. Hopefully get everything set up for the fall leagues on a good foot. So with that, everyone, have a good night, and we'll see you all in August.